This week on The View from 32, we visit the Jesup Library and chat with some of their staff about their day-to-day during the pandemic, as well as what the future holds for this beautiful, historic library.
Hi, welcome to the Jesup Memorial Library in Bar Harbor. I'm Lila Miller. I'm the Advancement and Community Relations Director, and I'm happy to welcome you to the library, take you on a little tour. The library is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful buildings in Bar Harbor. It was built in 1911, and we have been living in it happily for the last 110 years. And I'll just show you quickly in this opening welcome rotunda some of the beautiful architecture that's really typical of the time that makes the Jesup stand out as such a jewel box of a library and a part of this community. So we'll walk on through here to the main reading room. We'll come back to do the children's room and the periodicals room. But first things first, when you're in the Jesup right now, please wear a mask. We're observing all COVID precautions, trying to protect our community, keep each other safe, doing our part here. So come on through. This is our main reading room. And just going to pause for a moment to say, ta-da, look at this. It is such a beautiful space. We feel so lucky to be able to have this here and be able to welcome patrons in our community into this space. This is a really unique space. You'll hear later from Ruth, the director, about some of the history of the architecture when it was built. But it's a really interesting study in a community coming together, particularly a group of women who came together to fund the Jesup. The first cash donation came from Maria Huntington. The first librarian in town was a woman named Endora Salisbury. And the primary funder of the library was Maria DeWitt Jesup, in honor of her husband Morris Jesup, who were summer residents. So we've had this beautiful space that we've been using consistently since that time. It's such a unique building in the community. And we'll take you on a little tour. You get to come and see some of our stacks. So even in COVID times, we're open for browsing right now, which is a really unique thing that we're happy to be able to offer. People have to make appointments, or if you walk in and we're quiet, we can still squeeze you in. Observe social distancing. We're doing hand sanitizing and washing as you come in. We have a lot of washing stations at the front. And then you can come in and browse and continue to find new books, new entertainment. We have books, movies, CDs, videos, everything you can imagine that a library could offer here. And so we are, open, welcoming our community in, even in these hard times. It's one of the things that really makes the Jesup stand out, is how we're a part of the community, not just providing books, but a sense of community. You know, our front desk staff, who I'm sure many people here know, have been here for years. You get to see a smiling face. You get to see people who say, oh, I read this book and I loved it and I thought of you, and no, I set this one aside because I thought you'd be interested in that. It's part of what keeps us doing what we do, and we love that here. So we're really glad to be able to offer that. One of the unique things about this space is part of the design. It's a really beautiful design space. We have cork floors. These are the original cork floors. A little bit of maintenance over the years. And just the shape of this whole room leads itself to really amazing acoustics. So we have had a few concerts here in the past. We're going to be doing more of that in the future, including our beautiful piano. It was a donation we're really glad to have here. And that's part of our work with the Criterion. We'll be having a concert series. This space is very unique. We're excited to be able to welcome people in to use it in new and creative ways. And we're limiting the number of people we can have in the building at one time, having performers in who are missing their venues, who are not able to perform the way that they would like to have this space to themselves to perform and to share their art with us as the community, something that will keep us all warmer and happier on the coming winter nights as we head into the dark season here in Maine. So we'll excuse our mess. This is some of our COVID precaring. But as you can see, we just beautiful structure of this library, the nice windows, beautiful light. We'll sneak upstairs quickly so I can show you one of my favorite features on the other end. So this is one of our, again, part of our reading room, part of our stacks. It's nice to be able to come here. This is our nonfiction. We're in biographies at the moment. You can read about Dickens or Lindbergh. We have chairs set up here and work tables that usually we encourage people to come and linger. Can't do that at the moment. And we have comfortable reading chairs so you can come find a book, get tucked away in here, and get lost in the library, which is everyone's favorite existence, in my opinion. One of the things that I really like about working here at the Jesup is that it's this beautiful old classic building, but we also do so much more. This is not not your sort of stereotypical library. We won't shush you for being too loud. I mean, we will if you're obnoxious, but bring your kids. You know, we have dogs that come in all the time to say hello. Come and make some noise. Come and be here, be a part of the library, see what we offer, and really settle in and enjoy it. We're a community library, and that's about serving the needs of the community in every way. So that's what we do here. As we walk down the stairs, I want to show you some of the really beautiful design and construction that went into this. So it seems really simple, but the curvature of this wood, which is done by hand, just makes us all stop every time we walk through here, which is a lot, as most of our staff workspace is down below our stacks and our workrooms. And just to see the care and effort that people put into this space, how it has survived and served this community for 100 years. And we're hoping that with the restoration and the expansion that we're phrasing right now through our capital campaign, we'll be able to serve for another 110 at least years. We're going to swing over here to the children's room, and the printers, which are through this way. Excuse us quickly. So I'm sure some of you will know Miss May, the children's librarian. She's done a great job curating this room and coming up with really fun, creative ideas through the pandemic season. She's been going on fun field trips, but she's been filming and bringing you virtually into the SPCA and doing cooking shows and all sorts of great remote programming. And she still has great programs like this, like a book bag. You can come in and grab a bag, and it's a book and toys and all of the learning components that just put together to be a really unique library experience. So we're a little stuffed in here. We're really excited about what we'll be doing with the expansion for youth services and planning. We're just wrapping up a community planning process about this that has brought in a lot of different stakeholders to talk about what you would need if you were to design this space for the next 100 years, which is exactly what we're doing. So this is the children's room, and we'll swing across the way to the periodicals room, which is our current, we like to think that it's the living room of Bar Harbor. Come on in, make yourselves comfortable. We can settle in here. This is usually where we keep the periodicals, large print books. Our collection changes a bit, but it's just a beautiful space that we're happy to have here and share with the community. Up next, I'm going to have you talk to Ruth Eveland, the Library Director, about a bit of the history of the library, services we're offering now, and our plans for expansion. So thanks very much.
All right. Well, Lila, thanks for sharing that with us. That's great. We really appreciate the tour. And now we're here with the director, Ruth Eveland. Ruth, how are you?
I'm excellent, thank you.
Good.
Given all the circumstances.
Yeah, for real. It's been a crazy year.
Yes.
For anyone that has to deal with the public and have people come into their shop or their business or their library. It's been good that you have been open in some sort of capacity, so that's great. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the Jesup?
Okay. I have been the library director since the end of 2009. My family and I had moved to Bar Harbor in '93. Our children were young at the time, and we thought this would be a good place to raise boys, which it was. And so I had done a lot of volunteer work around in the community, doing a variety of things. I had been a public library director for a number of years and had retired when my children came along, kind of late in my life, and had thought at some point it would be a lot of fun to be the library director at the Jesup. But we had an excellent library director, and so it wasn't until she decided to retire and I walked into the library about 2 weeks after my youngest had graduated from high school.
Right.
And Nancy looked at me and said, "I'm about to retire." And I thought, "Oh, really?" So
Perfect timing.
it was perfect timing, and it worked out well, and this has been the most fun library job I have ever had.
Well, this is a beautiful space. I have to
Yes.
admit, before coming over here for the first time to meet you all, I had never been over here. I've lived here my whole life, and this is just such a beautiful space. And being that we have young kids, I can't wait till the whole COVID thing is more under control, so that we can come over and enjoy some of the programming that you guys have, because this is a great space and it's beautiful, and we're really looking forward to spending some more time here. So tell me about kind of some of the things that you've been doing while we've been on lockdown, so to speak.
Yes. Well, we had to think pretty quickly about what to do.
Right.
We ended up deciding to shut pretty quickly after the schools closed down. That was our kind of a trigger point in terms of making the decision.
Yeah.
And so we spent a couple of weeks trying to figure out what we could do under what circumstances. And so certainly all of the library's online resources were still available in terms of using online resources. And we have access to an extraordinary number of databases thanks to the Maine State Library support. There are e-books and things like that if you wish to check those out. But the thing about the Jesup is that the Jesup is a community connection point. And we are known for the quality and quantity of our programming. And so trying to figure out how to keep the community connection piece involved was the critical part of the decision-making process. And so once we realized that we could offer some programming online, the way people have gotten used to doing it, that was a big breakthrough for us because that did allow us to, as we feel we are opening the doors as best we can at the moment.
Exactly.
And
and
offering
that's all
the
you can
programming.
do.
That's
right
all we
now.
can do. But the other piece of it is we made the decision along with most of the libraries in the state because part of our program depends on the interlibrary loan of materials so that if the library does not have a title year after, we can get it for you from another library in the state, which is excellent.
Nice.
But basically what we were trying to figure out is how can we safely offer service to our community? So the first decision was to offer our variety of curbside service, which, since we don't actually have a window that opens onto a curb, meant people had to come into the rotunda. But basically, people call up in advance or leave us a note online or something like that, and we'd prepare a bag of books, and they could just dash in and grab it and go.
Okay.
And so we are still continuing to offer that service.
Okay.
There are a lot of people in this community for whom that is their comfort level. They are okay with doing that much.
Yeah.
But we hadn't, then about a month after we did the curbside, we began to open for limited browsing so that people can make an appointment with us, and that's simply so we can space people out over the
Sure.
day.
Of course.
They can come in and have, 15 minutes of browsing to their heart's content, and since we have a giant slew of new titles at the moment, it's a great way to come in and get something fresh that you have
Definitely.
not yet seen.
Definitely.
So,
Now with the curbside pickup, sorry to interrupt you.
Yep, no.
Are your titles available online for people to see?
yes,
or?
anything that
Okay.
the library has is available if they go to, the easiest access is through our website
Okay.
to go to the online catalog.
Okay. What's
And
your website? Just so people can
JesupLibrary.org.
JessupLibrary.org.
Yes,
All right.
exactly. Just remember there's one S in Jesup.
Okay. Perfect.
In our Jesup.
I kept spelling it with two when I
There
was
are,
texting. So
well, because most of the world spells it with two, but our particular Jesup family spells it with one.
perfect.
So,
And we'll put links to the library and to anything in the description. So
Right.
if
Yeah.
you're watching at home,
Yeah.
you can go check that out and
Yep.
see if there's any books that you want to get or programming that you want to see or make an appointment
Yep.
or come in and browse. So we'll make sure that everybody has access to
Yeah,
that.
it's a good point to note that the programming that we've done in the last few months, we've been able to record it, and
Great.
so people can go onto the and see the links to the programs that we've already offered, and they can see the program
Perfect.
if they happen to miss it before.
That's
So,
great.
yep,
Perfect.
it is.
So, Ruth, what's next for you
Yeah.
guys?
Yeah.
What's coming down the pipeline? What do you have planned? I know plans
Yeah.
are kind of up in
Yeah.
the air right now, but
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting point because we had a great plan that we were
Yep.
working really hard up until the point at which everything kind of fell apart. But
Yeah.
we are still continuing to work on our plan. The dream for the library board and the community at large has been for some time to expand the footprint of the library. And the reason for that is because so much of what happens within the library needs space for people to be together to do stuff.
Right.
And while this is a magnificent historic building and highly functional in some ways, it doesn't have a lot of elbow room. So for example, the programming that we do in the library, we have to move the furniture. So staff has to take the time, we have to move the furniture, set up the chairs, break down the chairs. And it also means then if we've got a program in the middle of the library, people can't come in and use the library. So it's very frustrating. And there is practically no room for children in the children's, space for children in the children's room.
Yeah, and kids like to break everything, so they need
It's
lots
not
of
so
space.
Much, it's not so much the break is they need room to roam. Let's
They
just put
do.
it that way.
That's very
room to
true.
roam. So
That's very true.
and to be able to interact with each other. And
Definitely.
so the plan has been for a long time to take care first of the historic building, and so that's the work that that's underway at the moment. So you see the scaffolding out front is having to do with fixing the library exterior literally from below ground on up to its tippy top.
Yep.
And we are accomplishing that. And then the next phase is to create the expansion. And we've had a lot of, we had a pretty good idea of what we might do with expanded space over time. We've been able to work with a number of community groups to get a clearer understanding of what we want to do in that space. I'll mention that part of the design of the spaces is we have a pretty good idea of what we want to do with it in the next, say, 10 years. But we're making the spaces, designing the spaces in such a way that in the future, the community can shift things around if they want. The space is going to be flexible in terms of how it gets used.
That's awesome.
So the idea is, what is a library now? What is a library in the next 10 years? We got a pretty good idea of that. What a library is going to be in 50 years?
Right.
Who knows? But the building is going to be here, available for the community to use as it sees fit for this function.
That's
well
great.
into the future.
That's great. Now, on the website, is there a place where people can see your plans for the website?
Yes, on our website there is a link to the capital campaign. It's,
Great.
if you look for the little, either Athena, the owl, or Jesup 2020
Okay.
is the logo for the campaign. And you
Perfect.
can click on that, and there's a lot of information. There's the plans. There's a lot of, some of the programming that we've done explains it. There's some great interviews with our architect talking about pieces of the development process. We've got some good short community videos about some of the work we've been doing, and there's a lot of information there. And of course,
love
if
it.
anybody has questions, please call either Lila or me, and we will be more than happy to walk you through it.
Awesome. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of shifting gears a little bit? What got you interested? What made you want to do this kind of work someday? Did you have a turning point in your life that made you want to do this kind of work, or what?
Yeah, well, I was one of those kids who liked to read a lot.
Okay.
And so everybody told me, oh, you're going to be a librarian when you grow up, Well, thank you very much. Anyway,
Yep.
no, I actually did start to work in libraries in the second grade.
Okay.
Because it got me out of reading class, because I was a
Nice.
very good reader. So I got to go read to the kindergartners and the first graders, and I got to help shelve books in the school library. So I literally started working in libraries in the second grade. And I worked off and on in the school libraries through years. Wanted desperately to be a page at the Ann Arbor Public Library when I was a teenager, but one of my best friends had that job and would not give it up. And anyway, so I went through college, and I have a degree in American Studies because interdisciplinary study was the only thing I could ever quite stomach. Never really focused on any one subject area that much. So I ended up with a degree in American Studies. Trying to figure out what to do with a degree in American Studies, worked in a terrible clerical job in Princeton, New Jersey, for a firm that was measuring advertising effectiveness for a while, and decided, gosh, I think I'll go to library school. Since I had no interest in teaching, I had no interest in everybody in my class in college. That was the year that women went to law school. It was like a quarter of my class went to law school or something. Anyway, perhaps not, but it seemed like it.
Yeah.
So I knew that wasn't what I wanted, and I thought, well, let me try library school, see what the choices might be. I went into library school with literally no concept about what kind of library I wanted to be in, what kind of work I wanted to do.
Sure.
I was extraordinarily fortunate to run into a professor who became my professional mentor. His name was Arthur Curley. He had a wonderful library career. His last job was as director of the Boston Public Library.
Okay.
Anyway, Arthur was a brilliant, brilliant man, and Arthur gave me the understanding about what the role of a public library was in its community. And essentially, a public library, when it's doing its best job, kind of breathes with the community. Meaning that it has information that people in the community have identified they want, experiences they want, stuff they want to borrow, but it also provides stuff that people didn't know they wanted yet. So it has we have the opportunity to help introduce people to new ideas, introduce people to new things in their life. And so this is what I mean. It's a very responsive organization. It is hands-on. It is, literally anybody can walk in the door of the public library on an equitable basis. Everybody walks in regardless of your education, your age, anything about your life experience. Everybody is treated well, everybody is treated the same way and has access to the same set of resources. And this is a fundamental principle of what public libraries are. So as I went through the class with Arthur and began to think more about it, it was truly obvious to me that I was supposed to be a public library director. So that's what I did a variety of other library jobs along the way before I got to be director. But in fact, my first professional job was services to institutions in Burlington County, New Jersey, which meant a day a week at the county jail.
Okay.
Which was a really interesting
I
experience.
was going to say, I don't really know what that means, but that's great.
It was a day a week at the county jail, in which we pushed a book truck cell block to cell block to visit with all of the inmates and chat and pass out materials and all. It was really exciting. One night they used us as a cover for a jailbreak. So anyway.
I'm sure there were some good stories in there.
Oh, there were some stories. But anyway, and then I also worked in suburban Cleveland for a while as a reference librarian and providing the very first version of online access through the, what was at the time, database that the New York Times was providing. It was a terrible database, but it was a start, and because I was the only person in the library who had ever actually used a computer before. Because
I was going to say, that was probably groundbreaking, though, at the time, though.
Yeah, well, this was 1976, 1977, and I had my junior year at Dartmouth College, and Dartmouth College was very advanced in terms of computer use, because even at that time, you couldn't graduate from the school without taking at least one class that required you to use their computer stuff. And so I had the exposure and the experience and was willing to tackle it. So
I love it.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to somebody that wants to follow your path and maybe do this someday?
Wow. The best thing I can think of is a variety of life experience that allows you to be comfortable working with anybody in your community. That allows you. That's
important. Yeah.
That's terribly important, because one of the things that I get letters all the time for people looking for work. Oh, I love books. I want to work in your library. And I swell. Yeah, you better love books if you're going to work in the library, but you also have to love working with people, because there is no job in this building.
Right. Well, books don't talk back to you.
There is just the whole point of what we're doing is to connect people.
Absolutely.
And you can't do that without communicating, which is why we're not a quiet library.
I love that.
Because you have to have a conversation with somebody in order to figure out what it is that they're after, and in order to help make that connection and deepen that connection, so that what you're providing them is not necessarily maybe just the initial superficial thing they thought they wanted, but is a genuine opportunity for depth and really meeting a need in this process. So
Definitely.
People have to have. I think it's very helpful to have a general education, whether it's formal or informal, that has led you to read widely, and but also, as I say, to be comfortable talking with a variety of people is fundamental in order to be able to do this.
Gotcha.
So.
Cool. Well, thanks for that. And I guess the one last thing, I would love to hear just a kind of a brief history of the Jesup. Where did it come from? How did it start? Where is it formed? I'm sure you could talk for 2 hours about it. But
I can talk a little bit about the history, and I'm really more interested in talking about its future as well. But
Absolutely.
But part
give us all
part
that.
of it is the chain of it. And I think one of the things that I think is the most interesting part about how the Jesup came to be is that the Jesup was part of an outgrowth of discussion amongst the folks who were part of the Village Improvement Association, who were looking to understand what it took to make this a stellar community. So it was a combination of local people and seasonal people who were looking to establish an infrastructure that would allow this to be a thriving community, so that when the seasonal folks came, there was a genuine community for them to come and be a part of.
Right.
And this is a very important piece. So, for example, one of the people who was on our first library board, he was a prominent physician in Philadelphia, but he was one of the people who was responsible for the development of the town's sewer system.
Okay.
So these odd connections. But basically, the concept of the library was, let's make a really wonderful library in this community. Now, at that time, Carnegie was still giving out library grants. If this had been a Carnegie library, they would have had about $8,500 to spend on the library. The library cost $77,000.
Yeah.
So there's a difference. But in the process, what happened was George Dorr, from whom many munificences in this community have derived, George Dorr was a true leader in this process, and he, in conversation with Mrs. Jesup, was able to establish with her that she would support the development of a really outstanding library that would be here for generations. And I think, for me, part of that investment, that stewardship of those set of folks 120 years ago in doing all of the work that they created in this community, that sense that they were investing so that literally generations from them this would still be doing what it's doing. And I love that. And so part of what the conversations that we're having with people as we look to find support for the addition to the library and the work to the building is bringing back that concept of, it's, your funding, your support for the library is literally going to provide for support for this organization for generations to come. And that influence is vitally necessary to be able to have that kind of investment in this and to understand that this institution is going to be here doing whatever variety of service it's doing at the time. It will outlive you.
Yeah, well, I love that. And these, these amazing people that created these foundations, like the Jesup, like the Criterion, back in the early 1900s. It makes me feel proud to be a part of the history of it and the future of it. And like y'all are trying to do some amazing things and to expand and to make this place, be able to sustain for years to come. It's really cool.
I love the visionary part of this. I think the ability, I like the day-to-day work. I like the meeting people's immediate needs. I like that piece of it a lot. That's a very satisfying piece of the work. But for me, the deep down satisfaction comes from thinking ahead, thinking about what we can do to position ourselves, to create resources, to create opportunities for people for that next thing. Whether it's a program that we are planning that we're going to be doing 6 months or a year from now, trying to find resources to support a new piece of the collection. So, for example, we've been fortunate in previous years to be able to find funding to support a specific set of resources around people who wanted to deal with raising animals on their own and all of the kinds of gardening and farming and things like that, and collections on traveling and all kinds of specific things that we've enhanced the collection with. So trying to think about what this community might respond to and be interested in.
That's so cool.
That's
My wife and I have chickens, so we're all about that. I love it.
Excellent.
I love it.
And we got the books for that. So
That's perfect. We'll probably be in because we had chickens in Nashville where we came from as well until someone forgot to lock the coop at night. So
these things happen.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So how can people get involved in helping in contributing?
Sure.
What's the best way for people to get
Well,
involved?
there's lots of possibilities. One of them is simply, let's start with just using your library. And there are ways of, some of that is coming into the library and being a part of what happens within the library, because at some point the doors will fully reopen again. In the meantime, being aware of what the library has as resources is a fundamental part of it. Beyond that, there are activities within the library to get engaged in. We have a variety of, we have a knitting group. We have, one of the fun things we do is we support the Girls Who Code program.
Nice.
So that's
I love that. That's
excellent
great.
Wonderful program there.
I think that is so important.
It
honestly,
is.
I really do.
Well, it's a vital part of what we see as investing in the future. So we're doing that. So there are also a couple of things that we're engaged in at the moment. We're reaching the end point on a series of community discussions around the future of youth services. So what the services for children and teens are going to look like down the road. both in terms of services piece of it and also in terms of the actual space in the new building.
Yeah.
So we're wrapping up that. The next initiative, which we're going to be starting on in the winter, has to do with planning around technology and sustainability.
Okay.
So rather than develop one large, grandiose strategic plan, that just sits on a shelf and nobody pays attention to, we decided to break it down into subsets and pull in people in the community who want to focus on that particular topic.
Sure.
So this next phase is going to look at technology, both in terms of what the building is going to have, also the technology in terms of the services that we're going to offer.
Okay, sure.
The makerspace and the other kinds of things that we're going to be able to offer as a part of that technology. Wrapped in with that is the sustainability of the library, because an awful lot of the sustainability has to do with the technology in the building. But basically thinking into the future about how can we set ourselves up so that we are going to be, the building is going to be as sustainable as possible, as long as possible. That's a fundamental piece of the design in this building. But also, how can we be responsible citizens? Because that's a big piece of it. One of the things the library can offer is best practices, and so we can serve as a model to people in this process. But the pleasure of getting a variety of people in the community in to talk about these topics and to generate ideas and have good back and forth and develop best practices and get ourselves set up for that next couple of generations is going to be a lot of fun. So the technology planning, technology and sustainability planning is next on the list.
Definitely. Well, that's awesome.
Yep.
That's great. Well,
Yep.
Ruth, thanks for chatting with me for a bit.
Always a
I know
pleasure.
that we had chatted about doing some live music in here,
Yes.
partnering with the Criterion and doing
Yeah.
some music. So that'll be
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
And that's coming down the pipeline.
Yep.
But we just are really happy to come in and meet you and
Yeah.
chat with you and hopefully continue a great relationship with the Jesup.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that the library has done very, very well over the last batch of years is work with a wide variety of community organizations. And I am very excited to finally be able to work with the Criterion.
Definitely. Well, likewise. Yeah, it'll be great.
I think this is going to be a great partnership, and I think that, you have a specific venue, we have a specific venue, but there's work that we can do together
Definitely.
in both spaces for the benefit of the community, which is what the
Definitely.
point of it is.
Exactly. At the end of the day, I mean, it's a small town. The
Yeah.
community
Yes.
is, that's what keeps people going. It's what
Yes.
keeps people engaged and
Absolutely.
connected. And so, yeah, it's important.
Super.
It's great. Well, Ruth, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
And it's been great to talk with you.
Indeed.
And look forward to chatting with you in the future.
As will I. Yes.
Thanks.
Good. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.